WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Banjul, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. The Gambia marks 61 years of independence amid rising cost of living ahead of December elections.
Now we have more money and then we have inflation.
We have a lot of achievements these past years.
I am so much excited as a Gambian citizen to watch how fast Gambia grows since 1965.
Senegal's High Court rules out claims of wrongdoing in the students' death during classes with police at Ukard.
The available evidence does not corroborate the hypothesis that violence was inflicted upon Abdoulaye Ba.
ECOWAS Court of Justice accuses Nigeria of violating its rulings. An EU special representative arrives in Bamako to advance strategic cooperation with AES bloc. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Sankulu Jibril Janko.
Glad to have you join us this afternoon. Newslink kicks off in Banjul, where the celebration for the Gambia's 61st independence anniversary is underway. Currently, thousands of Gambians, including senior government officials, diplomats, and business community and citizens, are gathered for the military procession. While the country awaits President Adama Barrow's speech, this year's occasion is a milestone that many citizens observe with pride, reflecting on the nation's journey since gaining self-rule. However, amid the celebrations, the rise in living costs are affecting households across the country. The 2026 occasion comes amid a tense political climate as the country prepares for general elections in December. From Banjul, Sang Donald reports.
61 years ago, the Gambia gained independence, securing a path of self-rule and political sovereignty. For many Gambians, this remains a source of pride.
We live in peace, and I hope more development are coming now. What the president is doing now is really good for us. He's working hard. We have a lot of achievements these past years.
I am so much excited as a Gambian citizen to witness such an achievement and to watch how fast Gambia grows since 1965 when it comes to our democratic system, when it comes to development.
We as a nation, we are very grateful the things that we have because no nation prosper depending on other nations. Me as a Gambian, I'm very proud to witness this day.
Yet, some say true freedom must also be felt in daily life as rising prices of basic goods continue to affect household budgets. While governance, reforms and infrastructure projects have made an impact, inflation and global economic shocks still weigh heavily on families.
I'm a family man, I have wife, I have kids. I know how the market is there. When I send my wife to the market, sometimes we have dispute that is she reducing the money I give her for fish money or whatsoever. She told me no, the market is expensive, daddy. I work with her there, I see how things lies. Goods are sky high every day. Now we have more money and then we have inflation. Right now, if you ask any kid on the highway here, they will tell you that I have more than $100 in my pocket. What can they buy with it? Okay, we have inflation everywhere, so that's the problem.
Despite the challenges, signs of progress are emerging with infrastructure upgrades, digital expansion, and growing youth entrepreneurship slowly reshaping the economic landscape. At 61, citizens say the Gambia's economy remains reliant on agriculture, tourism, and remittances from the diaspora. As the country marks 61 years of independence, Gambians are reflecting on both strides made and the challenges facing their daily lives. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Here in Senegal, the Public Prosecutor's Office releases a new update regarding the death of student Abdoulaye Ba at St. Job University in Dakar. His death occurred a few days ago during classes between law enforcement officers and students at the academic institution. This latest update from Senegal's Justice Ministry follows numerous condemnations and public outrage over the incident. Augustine Colley explains the details in the following report.
The death of student Abdoulaye Ba at Sheikh Anta Diop University continues to fuel debate in Senegal. Students, civil society actors, and human rights defenders have repeatedly called on the Senegalese justice system in recent days to shed light on the consequences of the student's death. In this context, the Senegalese Ministry of Justice addressed the press on Tuesday and refuted claims of violence against the victim. Ibrahima Ndoye, the public prosecutor at the High Court of Dakar, emphasizes the statement.
The available evidence does not corroborate the hypothesis that violence was inflicted upon Abdoulaye Ba. Abdoulaye Ba is indeed the student who jumped from the 4th floor of Building F and unfortunately landed on the asphalt, which explains the injuries and other damage observed by the medical examiner on the young student's body, and the fire that broke out in room number 85 prevented any access to the corridor of that building. As a result, the students who were somewhat trapped in room number 83, where the deceased Abdoulaye Ba was staying, had no other option but to escape through the window. This is the information we have at this stage of the investigation, and it is currently being verified.
According to the magistrate, investigations launched immediately after the clashes between the students and law enforcement officers have allowed for the questioning of medical personnel, security guards from the University Social Services Center of Dakar, including students and police officials involved in maintaining public order. Senegalese citizens have raised 40 million CFA francs online to support the deceased family.
Augustine Kohli filed that report. In Sierra Leone, a Pakistani national is serving a 40-year prison sentence for unlawful possession of 300 grams of cocaine. Abdullah Abdul Rahman was found guilty by the Freetown High Court in a trial that followed his arrest on January 4, 2025 in Lungi, Northwest Region. He was charged in accordance with Section 8A of the Sierra Leonean Drugs Control Act of 2008. The court's decision comes as Sierra Leone struggles with a rising number of illegal drug addicts, mostly young people in the country. Let's join Francis Boniface for the details.
At his arraignment in court on February 12, 2026, Abdullah Abdul Rahman pleaded not guilty and the case proceeded to trial. To fulfill the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, the prosecution called 3 witnesses, all of whom testified under oath and were cross-examined by the defense counsel. They include a forensic analyst with the Transnational Organized Crime Unit, TOCU, who testified that he analyzed the substance and confirmed it was cocaine hydrochloride, presenting a laboratory report as evidence. An investigator with TOCU led the investigation and submitted the defendant's voluntary caution statements, charge statement, and other court revelations. A police sergeant also testified about the handling and preservation of the cocaine, presenting a destruction certificate for narcotic drugs. Meanwhile, the defendant testified through an interpreter and admitted to possessing the substance. Defendant Raymond stated that the drug was given to him by a friend and claimed he did not know it was cocaine. According to Justice Mark Ngegba of the Freetown High Court, the possession of drugs was unlawful under the National Drugs Control Act of 2008. In their plea, the defense counsels urged the courts to temper justice with mercy, citing the defendant's foreign nationality. After considering the plea, Justice Ngegba sentenced the defendant to 40 years in prison.
That's Francis Boniface reporting.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Away from Sierra Leone, the ECOWAS Court of Justice accuses Nigeria of not respecting its rulings. The sub-regional judicial institution claims that Abuja is failing to implement 80% of its judgments. This situation has been highlighted by the president of the ECOWAS Court, Ricardo Conclaves, who is currently visiting Nigeria. Usman Omar tells us more.
According to the president of the ECOWAS Court of Justice, 80% of the decisions rendered by the regional court are not being respected by Nigerian authorities. Ricardo Goncalves emphasized this during a visit to Abuja. Accompanied by a delegation of judges from the ECOWAS court, he was received by the Chief Justice of Nigeria's Supreme Court, Justice Kudirat Kekere Ekun. According to the head of the ECOWAS Court of Justice, the non-execution of several rulings is due to lack of political will. He therefore called on Nigeria to set an example that will encourage other countries in the sub-region to comply with the court's rulings. In response, the Chief Justice of Nigeria invited the delegation to develop guidelines to facilitate implementation of the rulings by member states. She also emphasized that the enforcement of judgments falls primarily under the purview of the executive branch. The Nigerian Chief Justice encouraged the court to use its bilateral meetings on the status of implementation of the ECOWAS Community Court of Justice's rulings to define a uniform procedure for enforcing its judgments. As a reminder, in 2024, the Nigerian government urged the West African Court to refrain from issuing orders and judgments that it describes as unenforceable. The federal government stressed that some ECOWAS court rulings were virtually impossible to enforce and therefore advocated for greater promotion of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms in the region.
Usman Omar with that report. Well, still in Nigeria, lawmakers at the National Assembly are actively discussing proposed amendments to the country's Electoral Act. The debates are focused on election timelines, electronic transmission of results, and the harmonization of differing provisions of the Electoral Act. These legislative engagements are unfolding in preparation for the 2027 general elections. WDR's Abuja correspondent Yeche Nusase reports.
The Senate has amended the notice period for elections, reducing the requirement from 360 days to 300 days. Lawmakers say the move is intended to give the electoral body greater flexibility in planning and to address logistical concerns tied to the electoral calendar. Senate leader Okweyemi Bamidele explained that the adjustment is part of efforts to refine the electoral framework.
The Muslim communities had reached out to INEC to say that the proposed date of February 2027 would conflict with the Ramadan exercise for 2027.
The amendment forms part of broader changes contained in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which has generated intense debate among lawmakers, political parties, and civil society groups over issues including transparency and the use of technology in elections. Senate President Godswill Akpabio puts it to vote alongside the debate around electronic transmission of results.
In the event that the electronic transmission fails, the primary source of collation, which is the EC8A, should be taken to the next center. Those in support say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Following the passage of separate versions of the amendment bill by both chambers, the Senate and House of Representatives have constituted a joint conference committee tasked with harmonizing areas of disagreement before the final document is transmitted for presidential assent. Opposition parties are calling on the National Assembly to adopt the House of Representatives version, particularly provisions relating to real-time electronic transmission of election results, which they argue would strengthen public confidence in the electoral process. With the notice amendment, elections may now be held either in December 2026 or January 2027. For the Bili ADR, Yeche Nusase in Abuja.
In the diplomatic front, the European Union's special representative for the Sahel, João Gomes Cravinho, is visiting Mali. He arrived in Bamako on Tuesday to present a new cooperation strategy for the AES region. This initiative aims to revitalize dialogue between the EU and the countries in the Central Sahel region. Central to the discussions is a new approach adopted by the European Union to strengthen communication with the member states of the Sahel. This visit occurs as Mali continues to diversify its international partnership, including those with Western countries such as the United States, whose envoy recently visited Bamako as part of bilateral engagements. We turn our attention to Liberia, where demands for swift justice are growing in the case of a 16-year-old boy who was sexually assaulted by a former security agent and others. A preliminary police report indicates that in early January 2026, Peter Jala, a former agent of the National Security Agency, along with other individuals, took the victim to a beach in Monrovia and sodomized him. After the assault, the 16-year-old boy was abandoned and left to fight for his life. WDR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker gives the details in this report.
In a heartfelt tone, on Tuesday, the victim's mother recounted the devastating impact of the incident. She revealed that her son's physical and emotional trauma has reached a critical point. According to her, the child is experiencing severe pain, internal bleeding, and has been unable to use the restroom for several days.
Last night he didn't sleep, crying. His anus was hurting, his chest was burning him and things. The people have to give him penta injection for him to go to bed. Since the NSA made solid mass, he along with his friends, my son was in a very critical condition when we took him at the hospital. The child was messing up bad blood. When his anus ready to hurt him, his back, his stomach, they will give him penta injection.
Meanwhile, the victim's mother expresses disappointment with how state authorities are handling the case. She is calling on President Joseph Boakai to intervene in the matter.
The doctor that was treating him, Collins Poa, was not really paying attention to him. I said the next time it repeats, I want you people to put the bad blood in pain so that you will take a photo of it, or you keep it and just call me immediately. I can't take the photo so the lawyers will see it, so they will know how serious my child is.
As a reminder, defendant Peter Jala has been charged and is currently being held at the Monrovia Central Prison. However, many people are concerned about the delays in the prosecution process. This incident has also highlighted the vulnerability of young people to sexual violence in Liberia, emphasizing the urgent need for comprehensive support services for victims. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
You're listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, Dakar, Senegal, online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegal's High Court rules out claims of wrongdoing in a student death during classes with police at University of St. Anta Job. The Gambia marks 61 years of independence amid rising cost of living ahead of December elections. ECOWAS Court of Justice accuses Nigeria of violating its rulings. Still ahead in the news, an EU special representative arrives in Bamako to advance strategic cooperation with AES. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Ghana's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has summoned the Russian ambassador to Accra concerning a Russian national accused of publishing sexually explicit images of Ghanaian women without their consent. Authorities are focusing on cooperation to ensure justice and address the broader implications of cybercrime related to this case. This diplomatic action comes in response to the rapidly evolving situation that has sparked significant public and official reactions in Ghana. WDR's Accra correspondent Nadi Ditete reports.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs says Russia's ambassador to Ghana, Sergei Bednikov, was summoned to formally convey Ghana's displeasure over the actions of a said Russian national alleged to have recorded and circulated explicit videos involving Ghanaian women without their consent. The ministry says the meeting sought to secure Russia's cooperation in ongoing efforts to apprehend the suspect and pursue justice while highlighting the wider cybercrime implications of the case. During the discussions, the Russian ambassador acknowledged concerns about the violations of the victim's privacy and dignity and expressed willingness to cooperate with Ghanaian authorities. However, he indicated that Russian authorities are yet to confirm the nationality of the individual involved, noting that the name circulating in the media does not appear to be a recognized Russian name. The development follows earlier actions by Ghanaian authorities, with the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection condemning the alleged non-consensual recording and distribution of intimate images and describing it as a criminal offense under Ghanaian law. The Ministry of Communication, Digital Technology and Innovation also disclosed that the Cybercrime Authority is compiling evidence for possible prosecution and exploring international cooperation options, including extradition. Reports suggest that the suspect may have already left Ghana, but officials maintain that investigations continue and that diplomatic and legal channels will be pursued to ensure accountability. The Foreign Affairs Ministry says Ghana remains committed to maintaining cordial bilateral relations with Russia while exploring all available international legal tools to secure justice. For WADR, Nadidi Teti, Accra.
In Togo, the cases surrounding the mysterious death of former Army General to St. Bitala Majulba has resurfaced at the military court. The trial began on Monday, 5 years after Colonel Majulba died under suspicious circumstances in his office in Lome. General Felix Abalo Kadanga, a former chief of staff of the Togolese Armed Forces, who was previously sentenced to 20 years in prison, was complicit in the murder. Is appearing again to appeal his conviction in this case. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
Referred last November, the appeal trial of Felix Abolu Kadanga, former chief of staff of the armed forces, opened at the military court this week. In the first instance, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for conspiracy against state security, complicity in murder, and obstruction of justice. Felix Agbalu Katanja is appearing again before the Togolese military court after his lawyers had filed an appeal denouncing procedural irregularities and insufficient evidence. They said their client, who was tried at the time alongside other defendants, received the harshest sentence. As a reminder, on May 4, 2020, Colonel Bitala Majuba was found dead in his office at a military camp in the Togolese capital. There was no signs of forced entry into the office and no witnesses to the incident. It is an assassination at the heart of the state security apparatus. The investigation proceeded discreetly. 6 months later, the prosecutor mentioned identifying the murder weapon and commissioning forensic analysis, but few details were made public. 3 years later, in January 2023, the former chief of staff, Felix Agbalu Kadanga, was arrested and tried in November, along with 6 other military personnel.
A report from our Loma correspondent, Sylvie Wadrago, voiced by Abdullah Hassan. In Senegal, a new project has been launched focusing on the intersection of money in politics, youth perceptions, power dynamics, and the challenges of reform. The initiative unveiled on Tuesday is being led by the Peace Consult Group. Over the course of 2 years, the project will conduct field studies, focus groups, and university seminars to gather insights and experiences from young people regarding the financing of political activities in the country. Imo Edit reports.
The initiative aims to understand young people's perceptions of the relationship between money and power. For 2 years, field studies will be conducted by Peace Consult staff, including focus groups and seminars at various universities in Senegal. The goal is to gather analyses and experiences from young people. Dr. Abdullah Kadgay, the project's initiator, said the youth are at the heart of this initiative.
When we talk about development, we are inevitably talking about young people. You know, in Senegal today, over 75% of the population is between 18 and 35 years old. Young people are the most numerous on the electoral lists and elsewhere. When you go to political debates or demonstrations, it's generally young people who make up almost 90% of the assembly, sometimes even more. So it's important to think about this sector. It's important to understand how and what perception these young people have of the use of money in politics.
Participants express high expectations of the project outcome. Theophile Besse, president of the Youth of the Assemblies of God Churches of Senegal, hopes to see greater transparency and a better understanding of political financing mechanisms.
I expect this project to lead to a much more politically aware generation, a generation that is conscious and doesn't engage in political patronage simply because money is involved in politics. Young people's perceptions are crucial. Today, people think they should go into politics to make money, but they should go into politics to change society, to contribute to building a better future.
Ultimately, the project's findings will lead to the production of accessible documents. All of this is intended to inform public opinion and contribute to the debate on political financing reform.
Imo Edet with that report.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The Gambia marks 61 years of independence today. Over 6 decades, the country has made progress in governance, infrastructure, and social development. Yet many Gambians continue to face rising living costs and daily economic pressures. Political accountability, transparency, and the pace of reforms remain key issues shaping the nation. Well, we spoke to Yoram Balo, a political and social analyst, on the country's political journey, its economic challenges, and the reforms influencing the Gambia's path forward.
Yes, how would you assess the Gambia's political progress since gaining independence 61 years ago?
The Gambia actually has made significant strides in its democratic journey since gaining independence 61 years ago. Well, the country has also experienced consecutive free and fair elections, improved human rights, and of course governance. However, challenges persist, particularly in the anti-corruption efforts and security reform. Well, these are the issues that we're facing.
What policies are needed to strengthen the economy and improve living standards for Gambians?
Well, the government is also implementing efforts and even reforms to strengthen budget processes and, of course, ensure transparency and reduce corruption. Well, key policies would include, the key policies that the government actually is implementing include public finance management reform, and that is the PFM, strengthening budget procedures and accountability. Well, the anti-corruption initiative, we all know, in fact, commissioners are also identified. So adopting an anti-corruption bill and strengthening the National Audit Office. Economic diversification is also important. Privatizing state-owned enterprises and promoting private sector growth.
How effectively has the government implemented the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission's recommendations on transparency and accountability?
The government has accepted 263 out of 265 TRC recommendations and is finalizing an implementation plan. Well, progress has been actually made in transitional justice, but challenges remain in implementing the recommendation on prosecution, reparations, and institutional reform.
Looking ahead, in your own view, what political reforms are most critical for the country's future?
One would be security reform, sector reform. Well, completing reforms to ensure stability and accountability is very important. The second one would be the constitutional reform, adopting a new constitution to stating democratic institutions. And the third one would be definitely economic governance, enhancing transparency, accountability, and private sector growth. Well, these are some of the issues that we actually put into considerations, in relation to this important question.
Yoro Mbalo is a political and social analyst. Well, in sports, the Senegalese Football Federation says it is closely monitoring the situation of Senegalese supporters detained in Morocco during the AFCON. In February 17, 2026, a statement, the Federation confirmed the Senegalese government is working with Moroccan authorities to resolve the matter, with the country's ambassador overseeing efforts to ensure the fans' rights, detention conditions and legal support meet international standards. The FSF expressed solidarity with the supporters and called for calm and unity, promising to keep the public updated as diplomatic and legal processes continue. Also in Nigeria, the striker Victor Osimhen delivered a sensational performance as Galatasaray thrashed Juventus 5-2 in the UEFA Champions League playoff first leg on Tuesday night. In the other UEFA Champions League matches played on Tuesday night, Real Madrid edged past Benfica thanks to a goal from Vinicius Junior. Reigning champions Paris Saint-Germain came from 2 goals down to defeat AS Monaco 3-2 in an all-French clash, with Achraf Hakimi and Desiree Doué getting on the score sheet. Meanwhile, Borussia Dortmund secured a 2-0 victory over Atalanta of Serie A. Well, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink and West Africa Democracy, the broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maudu Ju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. Coming up next is WADR's Gender Program 50-50 with Na Diditete. I am Sankule Janko. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County. Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia. Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and